First things first, I'd like to retract my statement about the botched ending in episode 1. I rewatched it before this and actually felt differently about it after watching it back. The focus on Joel was clearly intentional, and the ambiguity of the big reveal makes sense in the realm of episodic TV. They tease a bit now and follow up with clarity the following week. Makes total sense. I'm an idiot. What's going on YouTube? My name's Jay Lee and I like a lot of stuff. Today I'm talking about the second episode of The Last of Us on HBO, or Crave TV if you're here in Canada. Yeah, I was a bit harsh on that closing scene in episode 1, and after watching episode 2, I honestly don't think I can just turn my brain off and watch the show naturally. I can't help but connect it back to the game. However, I will say that in episode 2, my prior knowledge didn't take away from my enjoyment of the show. Once again, this episode also starts off with a prologue from somewhere earlier in the timeline, with a really effective callback to episode 1, where Joel, Sarah, and Tommy are talking over the TV reporting news from Jakarta, Indonesia. I thought this was a really impactful sequence with really effective use of the mycology professor, whom we only meet briefly. Similar to the cold opening in episode 1, this really seems to flesh out the events surrounding Outbreak Day. The episode then cuts back to Joel, Ellie, and Tess, which kicks off a banger of an episode. They really have done an incredible job adapting this to the screen. There are various moments that are so gorgeously lit and picturesque that it feels like the most perfectly rendered, highest resolution video game I've ever seen. I mean, look at this shot of Ellie. But then there's also shots like this that kind of shatter the illusion for me. I'm not a huge stickler for bad green screen, so whatever, no big deal. However, when they did this little moment in the show, I didn't know whether to roll my eyes or chuckle at the reference. Something this episode did surprisingly well was expand on the lore and provide a surprising amount of detail about the cordyceps fungus and how it affects people and essentially what it can do. This moment before they enter a building that's covered in fungal formations added so much realism to the show. Joel reaches down and cracks open a stem or whatever to check how lively the fungus still is, thereby gauging the degree of threat inside. Little moments like this really add to the believability that these characters have lived through the last 2 decades navigating this broken world successfully. And when shit takes a turn from bad to worse, Pedro's performance as he's filled with dread and instructing Ellie what to do next is just incredible. The palpable tension mixed in with the mystery of what comes next, unless of course you've played the game, was riveting to watch. We got to see a bit of Ellie's fiery attitude in episode 1, but here she's constantly put at odds with Joel, and it's just a lot of fun. There's also a few verbal nods to creatures we've encountered in the games before, which may or may not appear in the show. But once again, I have gripes about the ending, which I can't fully talk about unless I spoil what happens in the episode. Up until now, I've been kind of pussyfooting around the events in this episode, but it just dawned on me. If anyone's gonna watch a video like this on YouTube, they're gonna be up to date, right? If not, this is your one and only spoiler warning for The Last of Us Episode 2. So, by now, hopefully you know that Tess didn't make it out unscathed from the museum run-in with the clickers. She ends up sacrificing herself in a giant fiery blaze to help Joel and Ellie get away safely. The moment is powerful and poignant, especially with her dialogue that mirrors and somehow improves upon what she says to him in the game.
Look, there's enough here that you have to feel some sort of obligation to me, so you get her to Tommy's.
But I did not enjoy the dramatic fumbling and flicking of the lighter before Tess's sacrifice. It's such a cliche means of building tension that didn't quite fit into the buildup of the scene. Her scattering grenades and dousing the floor in whatever flammable fluid was in the barrels. There was so much real panic and desperation in her actions just before this. Now, Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann had the reasons for why the slow, drawn-out infection kiss happens, but I still didn't enjoy it. It just slowed down the scene to an unsettling halt and didn't give Tess the final moment of badassery that I think she deserved. Even with this glaring flaw in the final scene, I think I liked it more than the first episode. There's just so much to love. Facing off with the clickers, seeing the overgrown city, witnessing the beginning of the Joel-Ellie dynamic. I cannot wait for more, and I'm giving episode 2 of The Last of Us a 9 out of 10. After rewatching the first episode before this one, I do think I'd go back and bump that one up to a 9 out of 10 as well. And even with the same score, I do think I'd lean slightly towards this one as my favorite of the 2. In any case, that's all from me this week. Come back soon to catch my thoughts on all the stuff I haven't talked about yet.